Here's a question. Who are you? Or what is this whole you or me thing about anyway? What is your body? Is your body just a house in which your consciousness resides, sort of like a tenant renting a room? Where do you or I, where do we stop, and where does the outside world begin? What is an organism? Welcome to the show. We've got Matt behind the camera. I'm Ben. We have a bunch of shady stuff happening in the darkness behind me, which makes this stuff they don't want you to know. And today's topic is something that's captivated Matt and I for a while. It's interesting, right? But before we tell you exactly what it is, let's take a closer look at the human body. Believe it or not, most of the cells in your body are not human cells. They're bacteria, and there's a lot of bacteria in your body. In fact, bacterial cells outnumber your human cells 10 to 1. 10 times more bacteria in your body by cell count. Luckily, because bacteria is very small in comparison to a human cell, we do know that the majority of our body by mass is not bacteria. That's only about 1 to 2%. But these are foreign creatures living inside you, outnumbering the thing in which they live. So if you think about it, the human body is much more like a city than a single house. Interesting side note here, we also don't know exactly what's going on in the teeming cities that are every single person on this planet. There was a study with kind of a silly name, the Bellybutton Biodiversity study at North Carolina State University, and they found this analysis of different people's navel lint, or the bacteria in their belly buttons. Gross, I know. But in that study, they found over 600 kinds of unidentified strains of bacteria. We being the human species, don't know everyone who lives in this city we call a person. But then that makes you think about scale, right? Like if we have so much bacteria living inside of us, again, its own living thing that just depends upon us. What if we are bacteria living inside of something much larger? What if there is an organism much bigger than us in which we exist? What if the Earth itself is alive? It's just one big thing that lives. This is called the Gaia Hypothesis. This was proposed by a guy named James Lovelock, a futurist and an inventor. However, this is not the first time this idea has come around. People have talked about, Mother Nature, for instance, or Earth goddesses for millennia, since before we were writing down religions, when we were just telling each other about religions, people had this idea. Now, the concept here is maybe not exactly the way that a person is. I mean, you're watching this, you think, you imagine the future, you remember the past, all of that sapient jazz. But this is not saying that planet Earth is something that sits around and thinks about the future or remembers the past. Instead, it's a complex system that self-regulates, and that's one of the big parts of the argument. We should go ahead and say that despite receiving accolades in some other fields, Lovelock's idea is pretty much rejected by the scientific community at large. Richard Dawkins, other noted thinkers of our time find this to be, some would say it's a flawed hypothesis. Some would say that it's just pseudoscience. Lovelock himself was inspired by this idea when he was working with NASA to try to figure out the possibility of life on Mars. Since that time, he's written several books, one of the first being the Gaia Hypothesis, which you can read for more details on this concept. And so we had a question for you guys this week before we move on to our next videos. What do you think? Is it possible that the Earth could be considered one living superorganism? Or is this instead a metaphor of sorts? Is it just pseudoscience? So whether you believe that Earth is some gigantic superorganism self-regulating, or whether you think it's bunk, there's one thing that everybody can agree on as a fact. This whole Earth thing, right, is a series of sophisticated, closely intertwined processes that exist and rely upon one another and are so complicated, in fact, that we haven't figured everything else out yet. So at this point, who knows what we will learn about the increasingly blurred line between an individual living thing and a collection of living things. So let us know what you think about this Gaia hypothesis in the comments below. And if you'd like to learn more stuff they don't want you to know, visit us on Facebook and Twitter, where we are Conspiracy Stuff. Furthermore, if you'd like to hear every audio podcast we've ever done, you can visit our website, stufftheydon'twantyoutoKnow.com. And if you want to talk to us, but somebody knocking?